Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Brony Debates Live. I hope you're all doing well out there. I can't freaking stand these people that are in the thumbnail with me, but we're going to have a good conversation anyway. They're just, I don't know, pay no attention to me. I'm a curmudgeonly old man, and they won't stop trolling me before we go live. Anyway.
Two of us here are older than you.
Nobody is older than me. I am eternal. Anyway, today we're picking up where we left off on the last Brony Debates topic, which was, for those who weren't there, is nostalgia being weaponized, mostly in the sense of like for political reasons. And eventually towards the end of that stream, where we're sort of moving on to the idea of, can you reboot a series and make it good, which I know is a very bold statement for a brony to be making, because the whole reason any of us are sitting in this call right now is because of a reboot. But lately we've been seeing reboots in quality just kind of trending down, or maybe we haven't, right? And maybe it's just all in our heads. But so we're gonna figure out the answers to these questions tonight of what, if anything, we can change, or maybe it's just the community that's the problem. So joining me tonight, we got Cruizer. How are you doing tonight, Cruizer?
Glad to have the day off so I can be here on time.
Nice. Yep, it's always good to have you. We got the lovely Princess Heather Blossom joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm full of chicken, and I'm not talking about Silver Quill, so don't misinterpret that.
Yeah, you're drenched in soda too.
Yeah, they should have been there for that.
Spilled your drink all over your desk. This was so depressing.
That's not a spill. That was an explosion.
Yep, still so depressing. We got DJ joining us tonight. How are you doing, DJ?
Bienvenue.
Little slow on that soundboard there. All right. Glad you're having fun. And we got Silver Quill joining us tonight. How are you doing tonight, Silver?
They hear me trolling. They hate it. But I about this because I'm over 30. Look at me, I'm over 30. Nostalgia works when I'm over 30. I remember I'm over 30.
You know, back when I was watching like the Channel Awesome stuff, one of Nostalgia Chicks, I forgot her real name.
Lindsay Ellis.
Lindsay Ellis. One of her early things was that she pointed in one of her early videos, she pointed out that like Grease made in the 70s was nostalgic for the 50s, and so on and so forth. I forgot which other shows and movies she named, but basically showed like a 20-year pattern of we're always nostalgic for whatever it was 20 years ago. 20 to 30 years ago. I know like back in the last 10 years we had a real nostalgia for the 1980s, and showing up in a lot of the pop music. But anyway, I've already established the topic for tonight, so let me give a shout out to my generous supporters on Patreon, especially those on the $10 and up tier. These are Princess Heather Blossom, who's with us tonight, Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, who's with us tonight, Rein-Kun, Morning Star, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Zoro RX720, Mr. Sonic 31, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. Go check out all their links in the description as well. They make some pretty good stuff. So that was the ultimate question, is how do we make a good reboot? Where is the balance, if any, of changing things to keep it fresh, or keeping the old formulas and tropes and just keeping everything the same so the fans maybe like it, but we also run the risk of getting stale? So let's just start with Silver and work our way to the right of the thumbnail. What do you think?
Well, there are rules that one could follow, but even then, people can't fully agree on them. Before we started this podcast, I did just a quick Google search of rules for reboots, and got weigh-ins from Crack.com, Den of Geek, the Film Stage, and Daily Telegraph. All of them raise some interesting points. I do believe that a reboot can be entertaining, innovative, and honor the original without trying to replace it. But very often there are a lot of factors, especially Hollywood, I would call executive meddling, that are trying too hard to appeal to everybody, whereas a reboot of a specific piece really needs to speak to the audience of that classic piece. So you have to give up looking for the large macro and focus on the micro community. And maybe, as with Friendship is Magic, you will hit it big and draw in some new folks.
Well, the thing about Friendship is Magic, and that's one of very few reboots, in my opinion, that ever came out good in the first place. Is that it didn't talk down to the audience. It was there intended to be for everybody, and it worked. And internet trolls took it and made it what it is today. I think if you try to make things like that happen, then your efforts come off as artificial or shallow or pandering. And when it's not genuine, your audience can tell. And it's just another form of talking down to your audience, so that, subtracts from the quality as well. So with that in mind, I'm giving my 2 cents to everything a little too early here. DJ, what do you think?
Tricky. It's very hard to get a reboot right, even when you have fans of it working on it.
Can you name any reboots off the top of your head that you thought were really good? I mean, we already talked about Friendship is Magic, but what else you got for me?
DuckTales.
What about DuckTales? Exactly, got it right. Are you going to do that every time?
I'm preconditioned since childhood.
Let me get my bass so I can do the intro.
You're not even doing it right. It's woo.
This will be the next Brony debates. DuckTales song. How does it go?
Just 1 hour of Silver and I making noises back and forth at each other. All right, yeah. Put the bass down and let DJ answer the question here. So DuckTales. What made DuckTales good?
DuckTales was good because it took the main characters we were familiar with in the original DuckTales and gave them a lot more personality. You got to understand each character more, especially with the main trio. They all had unique personalities rather than just being clones of each other. I know I've heard some people are kind of split on Wendy. I kind of like the newer one better, even though she is very similar to Mabel, almost eerily so. Also, the new voice of Scrooge. As a David Tennant fan, I approve.
Like Mabel is in Mabel from Gravity Falls?
Yes.
Okay.
She has a lot of that excitedness, but it's more if Mabel was a shut-in, not by choice.
Interesting.
It also took upon itself to do a lot more storytelling instead of just episodic. It did have overarching stories, which is a very popular thing these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it paid a lot of homage to the original Disney Afternoon series by bringing in several of them. Darkwing Duck, of course, being a very prominent recurring character through the series, which was fun. Having a fresh take on that, even though it didn't end up going very far, sadly.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was a pretty good take on the series, and definitely doesn't replace it. It's like having the 60s Batman and the 90s Batman.
Interesting.
The 60s live action show and the 90s animated show.
And
that's what I would compare it to.
You talking about DuckTales reminded me of 2 other examples that I'll use to segue into Heather here, and one of them being that you introduced me to of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which did roughly the same thing that you just described. And to transition over to what I'm almost certain Heather is going to say is G.I. Joe Renegades also followed a very similar formula. So Heather, what do you think about tonight's question?
All right, I'm here to do one thing and one thing only, and that's talk about G.I. Joe some more because no one else talks about it. And I think that's very rude. Reboots, if we're going to like the original question you used as like a freaking clickbait, reboots can be good. Yes, they can be hella good. They can also be hella bad. And you know what? G.I. Joe is the perfect franchise to look at both examples of it being really bad and really good. Because G.I. Joe Renegades was freaking awesome. And G.I. Joe Resolute, also really awesome. And I want to talk about G.I. Joe Resolute a little bit more because I think it was actually the perfect reboot of like from G.I. Joe Real American Heroes. It gave us like a more of a modern edge to it while keeping some of the original spirit of the OG series alive. I mean, you can say Cobra Commander experienced a huge character shift, but not too much so. He was definitely an enemy to be taken more seriously, but there was still aspects of his personality that stayed the same, the illusions of grandeur, and there even was a bit of cowardice still left of him, even though he claimed, I was just doing that to make the rest of you work harder. What a fucking excuse, Cobra Commander. Way to go. But it kept a lot of what you loved from the original series alive. It kept the relationships between the characters the same. And like you still got to see the rivalries and grudges from the previous series. It was definitely something that newcomers could enjoy and some of the older audience could still revel in. You know, it felt just as cool as when they were kids because now it actually is cool. Like adult cool. Like blood in there and someone died cool. No spoilers though. No spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, aside from a few Cobra henchmen, only really one person died, and then you had one more. But oh no, wait. We lost. What's his face? The sniper got killed.
What
did this? Oh, don't give away. Sartan. We had some unconfirmed deaths. We didn't like. There's people we don't know if they're dead because they didn't find the bodies.
There's no body there.
Yeah, but what's his face? Storm Shadow was buried, and then he wasn't anymore.
Tell me how that works.
Yeah.
Why didn't it get a sequel?
Then you ask, well, his tomb is empty. Did you see those set of footprints in the sand? That's where I was approaching to kill you. Also, can I just add one more thing to the conversation?
Sure.
Yes.
Woo!
Why though?
That's not G.I. Joe.
Woo!
G.I. Joe Renegades, I should also expand upon because I thought it was another reboot that did most of it right, but it clearly didn't do enough right. It definitely took some risky turns that paid off because it definitely changed the tone of the series because it no longer were the G.I. Joes like the Real American Heroes. The government was not on their side. It was G.I. Joe dubbed Renegades because technically they were fleeing the law. Cobra was the one that had the home field advantage of being the authority, which really changed the tone of the series. But the new direction was pretty dang cool, and Cobra Commander's characterization was very similar to how it was in Resolute, which was still a welcome change. I don't know if it's something nostalgic fans could have gotten into. I mean, and I'm saying this from the perspective of I got into G.I. Joe really late in life. Like, I went back as an adult and watched the 80s series and be like, haha, this is cheesy funny. I like all this stuff. So I really don't have nostalgia for the series. I'm a newcomer and coming in, and this is something that I liked. G.I. Joe Renegades did a lot of cool stuff to be a cool series in general, but they couldn't cash in on nostalgia, I don't think. And also, they chose an art style I don't think many people can appreciate. It's not very good.
Yeah, it was kind of like more reminiscent of Dan Versus.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. A little less cartoony. I just don't like it when they have really big noses. I'm not a fan of big noses.
Yeah.
But they could have done worse. There are like G.I. Joe reboots that you haven't even heard of, like G.I. Joe Sigma 6 that tried to take like an anime-ish route and that didn't work out.
But it had a really cool theme song.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, like the original.
I don't know. I haven't seen this one that you're talking about. Cruizer, what do you think about the question?
Can you please repeat the question? I actually had to step away for a quick second.
Okay, so what can reboots be good is the ultimate question here, and I'm pretty sure we all know the answer to that. But how can we change a franchise to make it fresh without losing the original audience?
Honestly, DJ Skywalker put it best with DuckTales, because I remember, I remember watching the original as a kid. It was those three boys, Donald and Scrooge, along with Webby and the maid. And I'll never forget when, right after, I think it was BronyCon 2016, we all gathered in that one place to watch the pilots of the reboots. And there was one thing they did at the very end that made us all aghast and kind of told us this is going to be different. And that was when they discovered a painting of some woman, and one of the boys goes, "Mom?" Everybody wanted to know who or where their parents were. And this told I think this kind of got the message across that this is going to be a new DuckTales. Still going to have those characters you like, but we are going to go in its own direction. And for the most part, I'd say they did. It's probably one of the few series where if someone asks, what do you think of DuckTales? Someone like myself or DJ or heck, even Silver would go, which one?
So something that DJ mentioned a little bit ago was that some of these reboots are not meant to replace the original. But what is, let me ask you this, DJ, what else is the purpose of a reboot?
I suppose it depends on how you're approaching it. I can't really give an absolute definition of that. I would say how to word this. The idea going for what I would want to see with reboots is a retelling, essentially. I like to see a retelling with things changed or updated. I don't necessarily want to see the same thing, but I'd like to see bits and pieces taken and other bits and pieces improved.
Would anyone like to add or take away from that?
I think I know what he's saying, because you know what series that does that a lot? It gets into the comics, DC Comics, Batman. How many times have you seen the origin story of Batman happen? But I feel like each time I've seen it, it brings a little something fresh. And even when it's only alluded to, like, it still carries the same impact across series. Like, it's very easy. I think it's almost easy to do a reboot of Batman at this point, because there's kind of a formula to it, but you just got to add a few more twists. Because you already got, like, the freaking Dark Knights, like, the Christian Bale Batman. You had the Tim Burton Batman that was great. I don't know about the newer Batman stuff. I haven't gotten to sit down and watch the new movie, but from what I hear, everyone's loving that. So the Batman reboots have been very resilient.
And I'd like to chime in that Skywalker covered the first three rules that the film stage talks about with reboots. No shot for shot. They point to the remake of Psycho, which basically just tried to emulate the original movie without understanding what made it great, including the choice of black and white versus color.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm about to move on to Rule 2, so now's a good time to talk about that.
Well, because I did see the Psycho remake, although that's a remake, not a reboot, but still. The thing with the Psycho remake is, honestly, I don't think there was much more they could really done to change the story and make it fresh. I think everything was perfectly explained. I don't think there's anything new that someone could come up with that would make it seem different.
To that, I gotta say that maybe that's something that shouldn't be remade or rebooted, because the original was as good as it was going to get, and the black and white seemed to be very instrumental in that. It's not like I said before, Batman, where there's a lot of places you can go with it, and a lot of rogues gallery and different story plots to explore to go along with the formulaic stuff you already know. Psycho just had a handful of characters and just a very small plot and setting. There's not very many places for you to go, so that might be material that's just not rebootable.
And that's definitely a question I want to get into later. But Silver, what was your second point?
Rule 2, modernization. I think this applies to both reboots and remakes. I did not see the remake of Psycho, so I don't know if they included like cell phones.
No, they didn't.
Which are trackable. Could this killer function in the modern era where people are literally carrying trackable technology with them? But then I think of what was not necessarily, well, a modernized reboot, Sherlock. I remember this one scene in the first season where they're trying to discover this underground syndicate. And Watson says, "Oh, I saw the symbol." And Sherlock's like, "Oh, describe it as best you can. People can only use a certain percentage of their memory." And Watson just holds up his cell. Sherlock, I snapped a photo. How the story changes when suddenly you have these new technologies at your disposal is part of what keeps it interesting and adds something new. And rule 3, be a picky.
Meaning?
Again, for reboots and remakes, you recognize what you got to be really choosy about what you want to take from way back when and what you want to leave in history. Let's see. I mean, let me see if I can come up with I'm trying to think of something that people left behind. The Thundercats reboot in the 2010s.
I still feel the pain.
Well, it was a wonderful series. I think much like Resolute.
Pain of cancellation.
Oh, okay. So now that we know which one we're talking about.
Yeah, we're not doing Roar.
Yeah, because I was about to say there were 2 major Thundercats reboots in the 2010s, and one of them was really good, and the other one made everyone want.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, but
well,
go ahead.
2000s then.
Yeah.
I will say that they chose the characters, but they left behind some of the inherent nobility of the Thundercats. There is no Code of Thundera in the reboot, which allowed them to explore, well, Lion-O coming to grips with the fact that his ancestry isn't as clean cut as he first believed. They're not always the good guys. So I think there you're picking and choosing how good you want your characters to be or what elements you carry forward, but maybe something is served if you leave this little tidbit in the past behind.
And what would be an example of that?
Well, there was the Code of Thundera. Let's see here. What else did they have? Cat Slayer, which they built in the first few episodes of the 80s show. Nothing like no central base in the reboot. They're constantly on the move.
And no adult child.
No adult child. No, Lion-O is very much a teenager on the cusp of manhood, trying to live up to some very heavy responsibility. That's an excellent example.
Okay, so they took some of the themes and just left them in the old cartoon and didn't take them into the new show with them. Is that what I'm getting?
Yes, and as a result, it was a recognizable but different product. And to go off Princess Heather, I think the reason both Thundercats and G.I. Joe Renegades got canceled was that they couldn't manufacture enough toys. These were still...
Damn.
They were still manufactured under the assumption that we were playing by 80s rules of you have to promote and sell a boatload of toys to be considered success. I don't think that applies to shows now.
Yeah, I hear you. I definitely, with Hasbro, I know that's definitely been the case. So, yeah, I mean, I considered that when I was binging G.I. Joe Renegades. I'm like, why are there no more seasons? Oh, not enough toy sales. Figures.
Yeah, and Thundercats, along with Young Justice at the time, was Mattel. And
Well,
I think they were hurting really bad at that time, so the lack of toy sales.
Well, like Spaceball said, merchandising, where the real money from the movies made.
Yeah. I mean, anime is the same way. They specifically, a lot of anime studios specifically encourage people to pirate the show because then it ends up driving up merchandise sales.
Got to get those figures.
Right. I mean, literally, in more ways than one, got to get those figures. But, so it sounds like when it comes to rebooting something, you got these guidelines. You got it. Now, what exactly makes these guidelines applicable? Do you think, Silver?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by applicable.
Why are these the rules and not other things like keep the spirit of the original, so because that's what the fans wanted, or I'm trying to find a better way to word this. I'm sorry, I'm not.
I think he only said 3 of the rules. I don't think he said those were the 3 rules.
Okay.
Oh no. These rules are, as I read over these, it's sometimes hard because some articles are sarcastic. You know, they're advocating for what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And to realize, but here's some examples, because I think, Ronnie, what you're asking is, how are they getting at the heart of what makes a good reboot? And
yes,
you talk about maintaining the spirit. Well, entry 12 on crack.com. If the original was rated R, Terminator, RoboCop, Total Recall, the reboot cannot be PG-13. Terminator, Genesis, RoboCop, Total Recall. You know, you can't water it down. Similar, updated characters should not look worse than the originals. And we have Michelangelo, 80s live-action movie, and Michael Bay. Mrs. Teapot, animated versus, quote, live action, close quote. And the Red Power Ranger. Ugh.
Yeah, those were some especially ugly designs.
So all of these talk about, I think they come back to this idea of understanding the spirit of things. Character design should reflect that spirit and be visually pleasing. And you have to ask, well, what was it about the old design that really drew people? I'm reminded of when Michael Bay talked about him watching the G1 Transformers, and he found it so ridiculous, and all these characters are so boxy. And then he took a whack at it, and I can't even tell what those characters look like anymore.
Well, the lack of wide-angle shots didn't help anything.
The lack of talent didn't help either.
Oof.
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing to add to that other than he lacked wide-angle shots because he lacked talent, and he was trying to use the close-ups to cover the fact that, I mean, so many moving parts. He bragged about melting a computer trying to render the effects on that thing, which is not necessarily something to do. I don't know. We've been talking for a little bit. Does anybody else have anything they want to add so far?
I did have one thing to add that I've been noticing here. I think it's not really one of the things that makes a reboot good, but I think it's one of the signs of a good reboot is that it makes you more interested in the series itself. Speaking from experience, this might hurt Silver a little bit, but I've never seen the 80s Transformers.
Gasp!
My Transformers was Transformers Armada on Cartoon Network.
I was animated.
Soul. You got the Pokemon formers.
And I loved it.
We gotta catch them all.
I had Transformers animated.
The Minicons, but that was my first introduction into Transformers, and it got me into the rest of the series to the point. And when Transformers Prime came out, that got me even more into it. And I've been following Transformers for a good long while now. And what Heather said before, she went and looked up the original G.I. Joe because she liked the reboot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just a good sign of a reboot, that it makes you interested in the property as a whole. I've heard plenty of people got into Batman because of the animated series, and they looked into the comics and the movies and all that other stuff. And it's probably one of the reasons why the 60s Batman is still as popular as it is because people are able to keep going back to it because of all the other Batman movies that inspire people to watch everything.
I actually, speaking of the 60s Batman, there is something that I did want to touch on, and that is, or at least ask, and that is, how much should the current time matter? Because the thing about comparing the Adam West Batman to the current Batman is that was the vibe of the 60s. And trying to find my words here. and that Batman is still part of the Batman universe. But I doubt something like that could ever be made today. People would want the dark, gritty, brutal Batman.
Well, the
I don't know.
Which is funny though, because it has been made again today. They made
Yeah.
2 animated movies based on the '60s Batman that I believe kept most of the camp.
Okay, but that was like what, over 10 years ago?
Like 5.
I thought it was longer. But even so, could you do that in live action today? Not animated, and without Adam West.
Well,
Yes.
you can do it without Adam West, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, no actor
deep
lasts
fakes.
forever.
well, any attempt to recreate Adam West is just nowadays is just going to be a parody of Adam West. People born in the year 2000 who have never heard the name Adam West know Adam West when they see it.
Okay, but now moving on to another example. What about the Hulu Animaniacs? Did that really capture the spirit of what they were?
Now
And
that
they
was
definitely
something
put-
we were talking about last week. Is half of us said yes, and then half of us said no.
It's mixed. I haven't seen season 2 though. I saw season 1. It was fine.
I couldn't
Second
get past
half
the
had me rolling.
after a few episodes of season 1. I couldn't.
You just feeling politically attacked the whole time, if I remember correctly.
That, and also it just felt like using a classic show to just talk about what their thoughts and feelings are.
Silver, do you have any insight on the new Animaniacs? Because I haven't seen it.
Well, I too have only seen parts of the first season. How can I put with the Animaniacs? The fact that they admitted that they weren't even in touch with modern times, that they were being in production a year before we saw it, was very surreal. I don't remember Animaniacs really tackling things overtly political beyond, Bill Clinton plays the sax.
Mm-hmm.
Animaniacs. But I was in high school and dumb as a rock, as any teenager is. So it may have all gone over my head at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question I wanted to ask here. I'm trying to remember what it was. So
Although,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I did find it interesting that Dot, in the reboot, the theme song even changes to Dot has wit.
Yeah.
The idea that she is cute is somehow, part of her humor in the 90s was "Don't call me cute or I'll kill you," but now I guess they again, be picky. They chose to leave that behind, for good or ill. I don't know.
And that's the kind of thing that gets to the crux of the issue, is when you take out something that some would argue was pivotal like that. What are you losing, if anything, right? Because that type of thing is the type of thing that someone might point out and say, why did you take that out? That was a pivotal point of that character.
I just think when you do something like that, you may start to notice that there is more of an agenda behind a reboot, or frankly any content whatsoever.
But at the same time, modernizing it means that you leave behind some of the limitations of the previous context, i.e. the 1980s. I'll give an example. A lesser-known video of mine, but still somewhat infamous, is my Humanoids video, where I pointed out that the attitude towards women in that show was really crappy. Wow.
Oof.
And they were all trying to be the 80s action stars, quips and danger and very low emotional. If you were to reboot or remake Inhumanoids today, I think you could do a lot. A horror cartoon could be quite fascinating. You don't have to make it, but it doesn't have to be exactly like the old version. I'll make one of the Earth Corps members a former Marine badass woman. Why not?
Just to make a cartoon version of the gal from Aliens, and there you go. Just make a parody of that.
Oh, well, Ripley. Ripley is not just. Or are we talking about? Dang it! Who was the Hispanic
Jarvis?
Marine in Aliens? Dang it! This is gonna bother me.
So let's think about this for a second here. Heather, you've been watching a lot of Golden Girls lately. And
oh yeah.
So something that we were talking about last week is that the grandma character of that show, what's her name? The old short one?
Sofia Petrillo.
Yeah,
real name is Talgetty.
Okay, cool. So Sofia has a lot of like casually somewhat racist jokes, right?
Oh yeah, casually racist, casually sexist, casually anything offensive, and they all try to run it off of like she had a stroke. She's just kind of like that.
Yeah, because like one quote that was on there when I was watching with you last week is she bursts in the room and goes, "Quick, turn on the TV. There's a black guy reading the news, and it's not even Saturday." You know.
Yeah. It's awful.
I have that show. I have no idea what that means. Okay, like maybe my mother would know what that means. I don't know what that means. But
Silver, you're old. What does that mean?
Racial equality wasn't quite where. Well, like I thought Golden Girls was really funny to watch sometimes because like there's just stuff flying there that would really get a show like some heat these days. Like it's like it was that point in time where they knew we have to start being politically correct, being inclusive, being gay is okay, being a different race is okay, but they still had the training wheels on of still being lightly offensive, but kind of in an ignorant way.
Right. So what would happen? So we're gonna reboot Golden Girls, Heather, right? And you're gonna play Betty White's character. But anyway, we're gonna reboot it, and you can do whatever you want. But what would you change about these characters for the to modernize the show? And would you lose? What would you lose if you modernize Golden Girls?
You know, I don't. Well, I probably would try to be like, "Hey, Sofia, maybe shut the fuck up. I know you had a freaking stroke, but damn, you're gonna get us arrested or sued." But I don't know. I can't think of what I do like big in the name of like the setting of the show because they were all pretty independent women, which was still kind of a weird thing at that time. Maybe. Well, a thing I keep thinking about giving was that I'd give Dorothy a lot more wins because, my God, she deserves them. We don't crap on Stan enough in that show, and they crap on him already a lot. But I guess for a modern audience, what I would do if we're focusing on like an elder, like, a golden age women's characters. I mean, what is this? I guess they'd probably be interacting a little bit more with modern day technology. I don't know. I can't envision what it would be like because not a lot has changed since then other than the show just...
I think something that's changed between then and now is that those women, those characters were exceptional for their time. And these days, an elderly divorced woman is almost normal. Like it's probably half to three quarters of them in their age range.
Yeah, that is pretty true. Like out of the two, like actually I feel like it's more rare because like
pulled a lot
out of all those women,
they pulled a lot of episodes out of that premise of this isn't normal. So now that we live in a society where it is normal, but if you were to change that aspect of it, of those characters, then you're probably losing the whole point of Golden Girls.
I suppose so. I guess that didn't strike me as much because it is very common now. I know of I've been acquainted with women in my office space who live that kind of life. It's like, yeah, I live with roommates. Nah, I'm divorced. Nah, my husband died. All that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else want to?
Is it possible that maybe we've become too uptight?
What do you mean by that?
Well, as you said, they had some rather off-color jokes, we'll say. But I think we all understood that they were just jokes? Is it quite possible that maybe we've become too sensitive to the point where we can't have this on TV anymore?
Interesting question coming from a white cis man, but that's not exactly the topic of the stream.
Well, or maybe it is, because that's the reason why a lot of these changes get made, and then fans have a backlash reaction to it. Most of the time, fans don't like it when you change something pivotal. Another example I just thought of like that was when they rebooted Rugrats recently, and Grandpa was an ornery, perverted World War II veteran. Now, if you'd want to talk about modernizing, right? So they took him, and yeah, he'd be too old to be in the age range that he was in, right? So they took that, so he's no longer World War II veteran, but that would place him, 15 to 20 years later down the timeline where hippies are more of a thing. So they made Grandpa into a hippie. But you lose Grandpa's character like that. Why not make him a Vietnam veteran or a Korean veteran? And you would have that, you would be able to keep that same character, modernize it for a different conflict. Because there's always peace movements, there's always wars, there's always every type of character. So why would you change something that integral to the character? What do you guys think?
If I took it back to Golden Girls, I don't think I'd care if they take out the off-color jokes, because it's kind of just funny to me, and I'm like, oh, wow, I don't hear stuff like that anymore, but it's not the heart of the show. Like, get it with Grandpa Lou in Rugrats, because Grandpa Lou was a very major character, and that's changing a big bit of his characterization. Taking the off-color jokes would not take anything away from Golden Girls.
Also, to put forth an idea on if you did have to modernize the Golden Girls, I think you're on the right track with having them react to new technology, but I think that would require the addition of a more regular young woman who is a representative of modern times.
Yeah, that would definitely be something nice, because they didn't really have a younger cast that was quite regular in the show. In the first pilot, they did have a cook who was younger, who probably could have introduced them to quite a few new things if we were doing the reboot, but they took him out for some reason, and I don't know why, but it's probably, I don't know if they just weren't ready for it, but they canonically made him a gay guy. But, so I guess, like, I forget what years Golden Girls, like, went out, but I guess that was just a little too fresh for them.
There's a son. One of the characters has an adult son.
They all have kids.
Okay, well, the one that I can't remember anybody's name yet. Heather, help me out here. The English teacher.
Dorothy, her son. Oh yeah, the slacker who plays saxophone and left his baby mama.
Yeah,
I guess he could work.
You're right. So watch him end up being the IT guy of the family, just because he grew up around computers.
Well, I would argue that they would need to make the modern representative also female.
Why is that?
Because I go by the definition of comedy as you combine, you forge a link between lack and excess. It's like matter and antimatter, and the reaction between the two is where you find comedy. Having a young woman who can represent modern struggles of young women versus struggles of women as represented by this Golden Girls cast creates a much greater opportunity for those reactions of lack and excess. Maybe lack of opportunities in the past with it compared against an excess of internet influence now, and how do these characters handle that? I think that can only be achieved if you have a female talking to a female. Once you get into male-female interactions, then there's always going to be a sense of discrepancy or a lack of a connection.
They do have daughters, but I don't know. I don't know if gender's as big of a barrier. I mean, I guess I could see what you're saying. And Blanche did have a daughter who, is unmarried and did an artificial insemination for a child. So there'd be an excuse for her to come see her mother often if she's parenting by herself. So that could work.
DJ, what were you about to say?
I was just gonna say, why not do both?
How so?
Los dos.
We have enough kids.
I mean, like for some reason, I know nothing about the Golden Girls, but for popped into my mind, maybe they have a grandkid that's a bum and lives in the house, and there's a neighbor girl that visits often because she has a crush on him or something, and that's how you get both.
Oh, they introduced a kid like that in season 1. It was Blanche's grandson. He was kind of a bum, and they had to teach him, hey, quit being a little jerk of a teen. But he's like, but my parents are totally getting divorced, and I'm sad. And they did sometimes do a regular thing they would do is volunteer. I kind of found that admirable about the show, that the Golden Girls were always putting together charity events and volunteering, doing something. They often volunteered to the local Girl Scout troop.
Well, to be
There's
fair,
also that avenue.
To be fair, my Nona, who is of that age range, spends most of her time doing that herself.
Which is nice. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you could merge the cook character into him. Maybe he has a secret love of cooking, but he's such a slacker that he never does.
Right, but the point is, if we, the ultimate question here is I'm trying to give examples of things that often get changed in reboots that end up making it worse. So, but at least that's the common consensus, is that these changes, like Grandpa Lou, or the hypothetical with the Golden Girls here, or any the entirety of the new She-Ra, changes all of these things, loses what made it good, and then people don't like it. So, and then the ultimate question there was, okay, so is there a balance between, if we had remade She-Ra and just kept everything exactly the same, would it have been any good, or why did we even bother? Which is what we were talking about earlier in the case of Psycho. Why would you bother remaking Psycho when it was already perfect and there wasn't really anything you could do to the story to modernize it or change it or update it without... Now, we clearly have a lot of good examples of reboots. So what makes... let's start there. Are we in agreement of when you change something's that's at the core of the source material like that, are you disrespecting the source material, making it worse? And, what sort of reaction do you get out of that? But is it necessary to keep everything fresh? What do you guys think?
I think it is necessary to change some things, and maybe even some critical things, in order to keep it fresh and to keep people engaged. Otherwise, you're just redoing the same dance steps.
Mm-hmm.
Though even all these sites I'm checking out for their rules, I find that even they can't quite agree. And there's one change to a rebooted series that I always find interesting. Crack says, entertainment for children doesn't automatically become entertainment for grown-ups just because you made it darker. And yet the Daily Telegraph will say movie sequels tend to... Well, basically they point out that going darker is actually a good way to go, citing the reboot of James Bond. And let's see here. And of course, Batman is quite the obvious take. As we abandoned Batman Forever and it's can't be taken, we went back to the Dark Knight.
Right.
Wait,
but
Batman,
even so,
Batman Begins.
And that's interesting because things like that change their direction. Like Transformers changes its direction so many times. G.I. Joe changes its direction so many times. There's no two Batman cartoons that are similar, right? Because you've got the original animated series, you've got the Brave and the Bold, you've got the one from the 60s, you've got help me out here, Heather.
The Batman.
The Batman, right?
The Batman.
Every single one of these had a very different feel to it, but none of them really lost that.
They were all still Batman.
Right.
I think that might be the crux of this.
I think if we turned around and said, like, let's say you made a new Batman, but now Batman's not an orphan anymore. He's just got some kind of savior complex with none of the empathy. Would that be Batman?
No. I would say Batman is turning tragedy into strength, rising above it, and if that tragedy is not there, then there's nothing to rise above. There's nothing to overcome. I mean, if anything, if you give him just a savior complex, people are going to ask, well, why isn't he getting treatment? Because he's clearly unhinged.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, they say that about Batman with the tragedy, but at least there you contrast him against his rogues gallery, who are also damaged people, and you see what he could be. You're not going to have that connection if you take away that crucial element of Batman.
Mm.
But what if you took away Batman was no longer rich? That you have a Batman who works his way, who has to build himself up without the luxury of inheriting a vast fortune.
Mm-hmm.
Is that crucial to Batman?
That's a good question.
I'd say yeah, because that's how he affords a lot of his tech. I mean,
well, modern Batman's broke.
Oh yeah, modern
There's
Batman.
a few. Yeah, I was probably going to say the same thing you were going to say. I was probably going to say the same thing you were going to say. Like, modern Batman has gone broke a few times.
Yeah. Plus, I'm thinking of also a line from Tony Stark when Steve Rogers asked, wait, isn't your company bankrupt? My bankrupt is not the same as your bankrupt. Which, take from that what you will. But I would argue, I think you could still really root for Batman if he was just doing his best out of a small shop in a garage or some hidden away locale. Mm-hmm. I don't know if being rich, other than perhaps pointing out the disparate lives he leads, is as crucial as the childhood trauma he experienced.
So then, what happens? Let's talk another hypothetical here for a minute. Let's say you change Batman's story for some kind of political motivation. For example, here, the author just lives and breathes Lenin and Marx, right? And hates the very idea of capitalism. So now his version of Batman isn't an orphan, but it was instead like his house got confiscated by the billionaire capitalist bank, and now the Joker is just some parody of Jeff Bezos, kind of thing, and now his rogues gallery are just rich people that he's trying to turn into some sort of Robin Hood, right? So have we lost Batman when we do things like this?
Well, let's see.
Not what I'd usually expect Batman to go for.
I mean, to have Joker be basically a highly established when he's meant to be the embodiment of chaos. I mean, I think you've kind of killed the Joker right out of the gate.
Well, I suppose unless we changed it and made we just switched it up with Superman, and now Lex Luthor is Batman's arch nemesis. There's that. There's Penguin.
What?
Hawkeye, and I also not Hawkeye, Green Arrow. I just realized that what I just described in our new version of Batman is pretty much just what Green Arrow was.
Well, in the CW show.
Right. So do we lose Batman, or is it just Green Arrow but with a bat costume now?
Oh, and Dag 1984 is pointing out, you mean Spider-Man? I mean, his enemies are like the Kingpin.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Daredevil eventually took that over, but Spider-Man and the Kingpin have had more than a few goes, Norman Osborn. So, I mean, they're similar ideas, Chaos Bringers versus Redeemers, but they're of different social standings. I think first you'd have to be very clear on what a definition of propaganda is. I mean, the scenario you described, clearly the person is starting with one message and everything caters to that. Whereas I think a genuine story may still introduce elements that will cause people to question or perhaps get angry. But they are a natural element of the world. The world is not an element to the message. If that makes
Interesting.
sense.
Yeah, Herman Sillo also gave an idea here. It says Thomas and Martha Wayne get saved by a masked vigilante, which wakes Bruce up to how corrupt Gotham is. So he becomes Batman to protect instead of for vengeance. Now, that's a slight change on his original motivation, but his original motivation was to protect and not just vengeance. Like, especially in the in some of the comics and the original animated series, he spends most of his time trying to get people the help that they need, which I would not describe as vengeance. I don't know about you guys. So, I don't know.
I mean, he takes vengeance on petty thugs. I guess one of the big things about Batman is he's not limited to just supervillains. He can also have really compelling stories around battling just a everyday thug.
Silver, have you ever seen Batman Year One?
I did. It was a 2-part thing, animated movie. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that was him getting his practice in on thugs and basically learning how to be Batman. I thought that was a great movie. Commissioner Gordon was an amazing character in that movie.
Oh, but well, honestly, I could go even further back than that for you. Batman: Mask of Phantasm, where he
That
Good movie. Underrated.
it was awesome.
It was fantastic, and Batman, he beat up some thugs, and it's where he realized he had everything he needed except the fear factor. Now, if you wanted to use Joker to comment on society today, having him be a reality TV show host might be something different.
From what I understand,
he's on Drama Island.
Yeah, from what I understand, the latest Batman movie has the Riddler, which is playing what a lot of people have described as like some kind of Redditor incel sort of archetype, but is meant to be a mirror of modern society in some way. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to see the movie yet.
I didn't care for the Riddler in that movie, honestly. He didn't feel like the Riddler to me. Felt like an imposter.
So that we've talked a lot tonight about how much exactly you can change. So do we have any thoughts that we want to share based on what we've talked about tonight before we get into audience participation?
I think I have one that I've noticed. Essentially, I think one of the biggest key to a reboot, I think, will be, are you getting the heart of the characters? As I've stated in a previous Brony debate, I believe characters are the most important part of a story. And if you're going to do a reboot, you need to understand what the heart of each character is as you're bringing them into this new quote-unquote world for the reboot. And if a important part of that heart of the character is missing, it's not going to land well, which I think is where some of them get mixed up, where you're not putting the characters in new scenarios, you're changing the characters to match the scenario, which doesn't land as well for a lot of people when you have a reboot.
I think that's a good way to summarize it, actually.
I have to concur with that because I've noticed that too with all the G.I. Joe reboots. A lot changes, but the cast of core characters usually stays the same. G.I. Joe is always going to have like Scarlet and Duke and Snake Eyes. Those are their Magic 3 team. Why they get shipped together all the time. They're going to have them. And I always like that Cobra is always the same. It is always Cobra Commander. It is always Baroness. It is always Destro. It is always those three, and they have roughly the same characterization per iteration. And they're always my favorites. Cobra Commander is always my favorite.
Heather, real quick,
yeah.
Now I do know that Cobra, Destro, and Baroness are largely the same in their iterations. Has Duke and Scarlet ever changed a whole lot between, like, say, between a Real American Hero and Renegades?
You know, there are some shifts in paradigm because in Real American Hero, their characters were very flat, and the interaction just wasn't very in-depth. In G.I. Joe Renegades, it's a lot deeper than it gets with G.I. Joe Real American Hero, but they're still team players. Duke is still kind of team captain, and Scarlet is a good co-head. They still have the same team dynamic. Of course, a lot more is happening with their characters G.I. Joe Renegades because, well, there's just a lot more happening in the situation to put stress on the relationships that are there.
Interesting. And what? So while we're changing vital aspects of characters here, how about that one doctor? I can't remember his name, but in A Real American Hero, he was
Dr. Mindbender?
Might have been. In the Real American Hero, he looked like Dusty Cat with an open vest, right? And then in Renegades, he looked like a nerdy doctor. Like, how about that?
Yeah. So I would say I wasn't a fan of Dr. Mindbender in the OG series, so I really didn't care what they did with him in the newer iteration. He's a whiny little punk in G.I. Joe Renegades, so I still don't like him, so that stayed consistent.
I know you liked what they did with...
I guess it would have been entertaining.
Yeah. I know you like what they did with Serpentor.
Yeah. Serpentor.
Yeah, that's
Get
a mouthful.
freaking wrecked. I hated Serpentor in the OG. He tried to take over Cobra Commander's place. No, that's Cobra Commander, sir. What are you, some test tube baby? Get out of here.
Yeah,
just make him a giant snake. It's perfect.
Mindbender's test tube baby. Now, here's the ultimate question, though. With Renegades, was Dr. Mindbender still a former orthodontist?
Yep, they never talked about that. As far as I know, he was just some weird young psycho with, he made these big, gross biotic weapons called, like, Ultra Vipers or something like that. They were just big ectoplasmic viper soldiers. That's as far as he did. That's as much as he did.
Well, I mean, I just remember from his character sheet that used to come on the back of all those cards, he started out as just an orthodontist.
Apparently, Cobra Commander was a used car salesman.
I hope he sang the song.
Yes, Cobra Commander said that establishing a ruthless terrorist organization was his first step towards legitimacy.
I think something I'm noticing here talking about G.I. Joe is that Dr. Mindbender was not front and center of the franchise. But if they had given Duke,
he was more of a supporting character.
If they had given Duke the Dr. Mindbender treatment between A Real American Hero and Renegades, Heather probably would have had a problem with that. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, you got to keep him good golden boy. He is the Captain America of this group. You don't just change Captain America into frickin' Tony Stark.
So I think there's something to be said for if you're going to change something, it's got to be something that was otherwise, would inconsequential be the right term here? Because Dr. Mindbender was there in A Real American Hero, but he wasn't front and center. He wasn't nothing plot centered around Dr. Mindbender. And but if
like the
Duke
show
had-
would have been good or bad without him.
right, Silver, what are you saying?
Well, to draw a parallel is you could He-Man. They after the brouhaha that was Masters of the Universe Revelation, they had a reboot, a different telling of the He-Man story, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, and they made a lot of bold changes. No question there. But really, there's only one change that I feel was actually negative, and it was the character of Duncan, Man-at-Arms. No longer a father to Teela and a surrogate father to several other characters. Now he's a hyper-energetic, tech-loving teenager. And I'm like, that's, you could have made him younger, sure, but he'd still have to be something of a father figure that was core to Man-at-Arms.
And wasn't he literally a father to at least one character in that core cast?
Well, boy, I could give you a soap opera outline of character relations in this spiel, but he was the adoptive father of Teela in the original, changed to the biological father in Revelation. But let's not talk about Revelation. Let's talk about something good.
Oof.
Like a hysterectomy.
But that's the thing, is Revelation changed so much that it lost being. And first of all, from what I understand, I haven't seen it because I haven't heard a single good review about it. But nobody liked Revelation because they changed too much, and they falsely marketed it as He-Man, and then made it the Teela story. Am I in the ballpark here?
Thank you, Kevin Smith.
Well, I wouldn't have had as much of a gripe, but with the Teela story, but they did try to go darker, thinking it would make it more mature. But all you did was make it edgy teenager at best.
With
darker,
with a
more
Mary
adult-
Sue by the sound of it.
Well, my thing is that they kill characters off, and you think, oh, aren't we edgy? No, you're just trivializing death.
Wasting potential.
Exactly. A real mature story is where you're hit with a certain degree of moral gray. Do you use unethical or questionable means towards a noble end? And as the lines blur, where do you fall?
So Heather,
That's a more adult story, not just I killed this character, ooh, aren't I edgy?
So Heather, how does what Silver's saying compare to, or relate to? Let's take what Silver is talking about with the new He-Man here and compare it to the deaths that we saw in G.I. Joe Resolute. What makes it? Are you seeing what he's saying between what makes those deaths good and what makes the deaths in He-Man bad? Are you following me?
I kind of get what you're saying, because the deaths in G.I. Joe Resolute, well, like we said earlier, some of them weren't absolute, and some of them were to like supporting characters, where some might be like, yeah, that sucks that they died, but it makes it real. But that supporting character wasn't like, incredibly core to the main group of characters you're usually following. Because I guess if I can spoil it, it's been out since 2009, G.I. Joe Resolute, go watch it. Bazooka is the first to be found dead. Bazooka, he was even dressed up in the clothes he would wear in the original series, which, they weren't really going for a lot in G.I. Joe Resolute. It looked more like standard issue. But they wanted to make sure you could identify him. I think that death was okay. It served a narrative purpose. It hurt because if you know G.I. Joe, you knew who that was, but he wasn't really core. It wasn't part of the core cast. So you didn't feel that bad, but you knew it was significant. On the other hand, with that He-Man reboot, if I could spoil things there, which I think this got spoiled for me because I haven't watched it, they killed Skeletor, didn't they?
They
Screw
did,
that,
but
because
they didn't.
Okay, but I'm just saying, if you get rid of a character like Skeletor, who's like the awesome main antagonist, and I can't get my yes, I'm gonna be really pissed, because that's all I wanted from that show.
I mean, they technically killed both of them in the first episode.
I mean, again, I can weave you a soap opera relationship triangle. I mean, this is just... I mean, it escalated. Would I mean that Revelations doesn't respect death? I mean that literally in this show, you can walk out of the afterlife.
So then that's exactly what I'm saying. The deaths are meaningless then. They don't have significance to the plot. So why are you going to care if they die?
Except that when one of the villains kills Heaven.
What?
Oh, I'm so glad I got that reaction.
Did you kill Heaven?
Yep, they killed Heaven.
Please.
They killed Heaven.
Did you do the human thing and like over polluted or something? How kill Heaven?
I think they're treating Heaven like the ancient Greeks treated Tartarus, where it was like Tartarus was a primordial titan, but also technically hell, or at least their equivalent.
Nope. Actual realm. It got killed. Heaven dead. Just boom.
Did they just stab it until it died?
Well, I'm not sure how into detail this would be spoilers, but you know, I could tell.
No one likes that version of He-Man anyway. Just spoil it.
It's just boom, Heaven gone, everyone dead again. Basically, Evelyn gets the power of Grayskull for herself, and deigns herself her own champion. So she's both He-Man and the Sorceress in one. And as she succumbed to nihilism throughout this show, she deems to destroy the afterlife. And so, poor Mossman, who dies in the first episode and is pretty much forgotten right away, he gets killed again in heaven.
If you die in heaven, do you die for real?
Well, you're technically already dead, and you can walk out. There is literally nothing keeping you in the afterlife. Except, as King Grayskull said, it's not natural. And I'm like, dude, someone's trying to take all the power in the universe.
Listen, as long as they don't kill Mechanic, he was the best character in the whole franchise.
They don't even feature him.
So they did kill him.
I'm going to do horrible things to Kevin Smith. How dare you remove my Mechanic? I don't know.
Just wait until you hear what they did to Fisto. Hoy.
Fisto, I don't care what they did to Fisto.
Are you kidding?
Walk me through this. So they exploded Heaven.
They exploded Heaven.
They exploded Heaven, so everyone died a second time. And what if you die? Like, what if they destroyed Heaven, but you're still alive and you died? Where do you go?
What happens in Has-Been Hotel when you die?
I don't know. I think you don't actually die unless you're killed with like an angelic weapon, and you just become mush.
I know.
Usually, it's just you disappear from existence when you die.
Like that.
Yeah, they do the same. They do the same thing in Dragon Ball Z, where it's like, oh, we're spirits in heaven, but we can still die, and it's.
That was filler.
Well, all I could say is
retarded is what it was.
We're not counting hell.
Yeah, the point is you can't if you're having a show featuring the afterlife, that's got to be it. You got to draw the line somewhere.
Let the bird speak.
Well, you know, as far as I know, they're simply cast into oblivion, unmade, nothingness, nihilism at play. Nihilism galore.
No, geez.
And the worst part is that Panther was in the afterlife. I never quite figured that part out. So they killed Panther. Skeletor's ride. They killed him.
What?
Oof.
Yeah, he was in heaven. I guess he donated to charity at some point.
Well, all cats go to heaven.
Well, oh no, that means that all the dogs too were just boom, everyone gone.
When was the last time you've lived with a cat, DJ? I don't think they go to heaven.
Well, maybe they do in He-Man's time.
There's a lot of.
They were gods back then, I guess.
There's
maybe,
a lot of backwards things about.
Future something else. I don't know. I never watched He-Man except maybe the Cartoon Network reboot.
All right. Is there anything? Go ahead, Silver.
Well, I mean, it's just Yep, and you know, they never really establish if they re-establish heaven after the conflict is done. I mean, I don't know if there's pulling one back from that.
Oh, heaven's dead. Life goes on.
Except not.
Honey, I'm gonna yell that at you sometimes when you're like getting into your religious stuff. I'll be like, "Well, heaven's dead. Life moves on, honey."
It's gonna be like that one episode of Family Guy where death gets run over by a drunk driver, so nobody can die, and everybody.
Honestly, I would point y'all towards the kids in the hall, where they say God is dead, and here is his body.
Okay.
And there's an entire segment just devoted to this.
All right, so I think that's good. I think we've sort of gotten to the bottom of the issue here. Now let's get into some audience participation. What do you guys think?
I think we've given everyone an existential crisis. What happens if you blow up heaven?
Oh, geez.
I'm really going through it right now, Silver Quill. I want to be more angry about this, and I feel like I got to watch the show now so I can continue to be angry about it, and I'm going to yell about it.
Why would you do that to yourself, Heather? That's like me listening to my political podcasts.
I'm upset, and I need to go through all the motions right now. This is going to be like my Destiny 1 and 2 rant that I did in front of Sweetie that one time.
Heather, I'm going to take you to church this weekend, and I'm just going to compound this and laugh. Because you're going to be like, wait, he's talking about heaven, but they killed heaven. How is heaven dead?
I'm going to start screaming at that. They kissed it on He-Man. You're just hoping for something. You're not going to exist anymore.
The Catholic Church is about to start re-sanctioning exorcisms because of you, Heather.
Yeah, but can we go ahead and move along? Because honestly, I've had like nothing to say because you keep talking about material or shows that I do not watch.
All right, yeah, we're okay. So early on, Herman Solo says, it varies. First of all, you need good writing, which I think a lot of the points that we've talked about can boil down to bad writing or having an agenda, which, as I've said before, equates to having bad writing. You either embrace the classic style or create something new, but in the same spirit. See Adam West, Batman, 90s Batman, and we talked a lot about Batman. So let's see here. Angel of Speed says, my 2 cents. In terms of formulas, they are designed to be functional. And if they're not functional, experimentation is needed in order to make them functional. Also, in the wise words of Golden Fox, stick with the source material. What do we think about that, guys?
Stick with the source material? Sounds like a good idea.
To a degree. Like we said, we want reboots, not remakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Understand the source material.
That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, understanding works better because, I mean, some of this stuff doesn't, like, we started off with the Friendship is Magic example, but some of these are kind of hard to apply to it because they didn't really bring the same characters to Friendship is Magic. It was kind of its own brand new start.
Every iteration of My Little Pony has been, and it has been almost a completely fresh start. What we would describe as Generation 5 certainly is a continuation. Paladin Pony T says, hey chat, do Samurai Jack and Invader Zim count as reboots?
No, those are clear continuations. Like, Enter the Florpus is a continuation of the original Invader Zim series.
And season 5 of Jack is the continuation of the actual cartoon.
Also a way to make men cry.
I mean, I cried because it was such a perfect show, and then it just took a dump all over. Just Amber Heard it all over the bed.
You still have the comics, Brony.
In the very last episode, you were literally perfect until the last episode, and then you ruined everything. Yeah, I never existed, even though it took, enough time to plan a wedding and bring people in from all over the world to watch me disappear on the freaking altar.
Love has power, Brony.
I don't believe you.
Your heart is dead.
Alrighty.
And there's no heaven, so, see ya. Evelyn killed heaven, sorry.
You know
I don't know why we're going by Eternia rules all of a sudden, but see ya.
Yeah, whatever. I'm a Christian. I know it's not real. I don't have this existential problem like Heather does. Cosma Inspira says, I think one answer to the question could be is if you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. Do we think that's a problem that these shows are having?
To a degree, because it's true, you can't please every single person. There's going to be someone who doesn't like what you made, but you can just, well, please yourself and, you know, maybe the rest will follow.
Cruiser, I haven't
I
heard
don't
from
know.
you in a little bit. What do you think?
What was that? I zoned out because I never got a chance to say anything.
Heather was talking about pleasing yourself.
Yes. So the Cosmin Spirit said, I think one answer to the question could be is if you try to please everyone, you end up pleasing no one. What do you think, Cruiser?
I think there's some truth to that because at least I've seen it in music. I've seen it in music. Like the band A Day to Remember, they made it with their latest album, Thank You. They tried many different styles, including their own. Now, granted, I do think they've earned the right to try different styles. I have criteria for whenever a band wants to try that, and they checked off every box. However, after listening to it as an album, it feels like they were trying to please everybody, like every type of music listener that's out there. And what they were left with was an album that no one really cared for.
I think pleasing yourself as a creator is part of the problem because a lot of what we're seeing in the modern day with a lot of these reboots and continuations is that they butcher the source material and butcher the characters and insert all these nonsensical agendas into it, and then they get on Twitter and say, well, if you don't like it, it's because you're racist, sexist, and I don't want you as a fan anyway. So that's I wouldn't say that's trying to please everyone. I think that's only trying to please yourself to a narcissistic degree.
Well, don't let a narcissist write your stuff.
Silver, I will teleport to wherever you are and take that soundboard from you. And then I will preemptively teleport over to Nebraska to beat DJ with it so he doesn't use his either.
Oh, how can you run to DJ? Curses, these buttons. Your rage is upsetting my sound box. Don't worry, dearie. He can't hurt you.
There it is. Run away.
All right. So does anybody else have anything to add on to what I just said about pretty much taking all these shows and just making them for yourself at this point? All right. If not,
I think it also depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, if you want this to be your job, you kind of have to care about what people say, or at least, find, the audience you want to appease to, and just stick with that and and if anyone else happens to come in and likes your content, then let the cards fall where they may.
Alrighty then. Paladin Pony T also says, what reboots do you want to see?
Give me another G.I. Joe reboot!
Actually, there is one I'd like to see. I feel like this show never got, or this cartoon, I should say, should have been a lot more popular than it should have been, and that's Mummies Alive. It was about, believe it or not, superhero mummies. This little boy finds out that he is the reincarnated prince of an ancient pharaoh. The villain was killed off, said he would live for 50 lifetimes, and centuries later, he's down to his very last one. He has to find this kid so that he can take his reincarnated soul, give it to himself, and be immortal. But he has these 4 mummies that are there to protect him.
Sounds nuts.
It's really good. The entire series is on YouTube. It's really good.
Oh, you want to talk nuts? Here, I'm from the 80s. Your weirdest idea is nothing to us. I can tell you of a reboot I'd like to see of the Silverhawks. They're peacekeepers who fly through space by just flapping metal wings.
Isn't one of them a bluegrass player?
Yes, and he doesn't have any wings. He has a cowboy hat instead.
Does he fly with his cowboy hat?
That would be awesome. But no, he flies a ship that can turn invisible, but they don't remember where it is. It's like, dude, I forgot where I parked. Yes, that's because your car is invisible.
What is this, Megamind?
Very possible. But seriously, Silverhawks would be an awesome reboot.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, and also their proud ranks include a mime, a time traveler, a stage magician, and a kid whose lower torso spins like a cyclone. That's puberty for you in Silverhawks.
Oh, that's helicoptering right there to a new level.
Indeed.
He does identify as an Apache attack helicopter.
Now that actually works.
I would.
What would I want to see rebooted? Honestly, I would kind of want to see Ranma 1/2 rebooted.
How could you reboot that though?
To make it actually have a story that has an ending.
Didn't it have an ending? Did they like?
No, it just stops.
I thought they
Even in the
eloped.
manga, it just stops.
Huh.
It never had a conclusion because that's just not the style of manga it was. But I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it being much more of a comedy, kind of maybe drop some of the perversion a little bit, and focus more on it being like a slapstick comedy.
Well, now you're just
And
losing what Ranma 1/2 was supposed to be.
Yeah, but there's not. It's not as much if you go back. There's a lot of perversion, especially when the master shows up, and I think you can drop some of that because it's not as funny these days with all the ecchi anime that's around.
You know, if we're talking animes, I'd also like to see Ouran High School Host Club come back because it's been working well for Fruit Baskets. That was a full-on reboot. Well, almost a remake because you only got the first season of Fruit Baskets in the original anime, but now they've been able to expand from there. I imagine they could do the same with Ouran High School Host Club.
How about SWAT Cats?
SWAT Cats.
It doesn't quite have the woo.
Yeah, I thought that was. I mean, I literally just thought about it like a minute ago. SWAT Cats, but I remember.
Although I would care for it. It would probably be like super grisly and bloody for no reason.
Well, it depends on who makes it and if they do a good job. What were you saying, Silver?
Honestly, that one I would see more a continuation than a reboot. Well, it never had a ending.
Most shows from the 80s didn't.
No.
Well, that was the 90s, though, wasn't it?
Well, they still went in perpetuity.
Let's see here. We got another couple of questions here. Rusty Helm says, here's a better question. What company do you trust to make a proper reboot?
Ooh.
Ooh.
That's a good one.
Not Disney, I know that much.
Yeah, that's the consensus in the chat, too, is we got a couple of people saying just not Disney.
I would say Hasbro has done a good job with quite a few properties that a lot of us seem to be interested in.
I actually have to go with Heather on this one because even when MLP did dive into the theme of racism, they had the right balance. It did not feel so heavy-handed. It wasn't on the nose. So if they were to say to reboot Mummies Alive, I would have more trust with them than, say, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, or Disney.
Paladin Pony T says Gargoyles needs a reboot, and I agree.
I do, but I do not want Disney to do it.
Which is funny enough because that was their show.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how I feel about Jordan Peele wanting to make a movie out of it. He has expressed interest in it.
Actually, I'd be very interested to see that.
I'm not saying he's not a good writer, but I'm just hoping he's not going to be a one-trick pony.
Well,
But
these are gargoyles, not ponies.
Gargoyles was made by the same studio that did like the Batman animated show for a little bit, wasn't it? The styles are at least very similar to each other.
You know, I can see that being like a superhero horror movie done right.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I think Gargoyles would be pretty cool live action too.
Oh yes.
Let's see here. There was another one I saw.
But don't make Goliath CG. Get the Muppet crew on board.
Quiet Storm says, "What about Zoids? That would if they can make it good." Now I remember watching Zoids and enjoying it. but I don't remember much else about it. So
it's still ongoing. They've rebooted, sequelized, prequelized, everythingized Zoids even now.
It just hasn't hit the States since the Toonami days, I think.
Mm.
I know they recently did some like Zoids figures that were from the same company that were doing the pony statues, but I don't think the animes have been as popular in the States since the Toonami days.
I knew of 2 animes, and there was one where the battling robots was treated more like a sport, and then there was another one that I didn't get, that I didn't understand. I was like, is this a sequel? What is this? And it was like, it was taking itself very seriously. It was like Gundam, but Zoids. And
Chaotic Century?
It might have been. It was 20 years ago. I don't remember that well, but I like watched it and I just didn't get it. It seemed so heavy, and then the Zoids could like evolve like Pokemon. It was weird.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah,
I do know that one of the Zoids, because I watched like the first iteration of it. There was one of the robots that actually had like 3 different suits, and one of them was so heavy that it could only operate for a certain amount of time.
Can I clear up some confusion on the continuity?
Sure.
Sure, Pigeon Man.
We here in America got the Zoids series in reverse order.
Oh, jeez.
Of course we did. The Chaotic Century, the one that treated it as more of a war, was the first. And then they said, oh, hey, Dem's Pokemons is making money. So they made Zoid Zero, which is what we got with the Pokemon Battle of the Day format.
Mm.
It was also called Zoid's New Century.
Yeah, but did you hear about the new Zoids? Zoidberg.
That's basically they all shoot at one character and he keeps going. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Let's see here. Discord Weapon says Johnny Bravo. Oh man, I would love. I would pay money to see Johnny Bravo. A modern Johnny Bravo reboot. Now, they had better keep Johnny. You know what? Change any character you want. Johnny stays exactly like he was. I need to see how that would play out in the Twitter Tumblr verse.
Careful what you ask for, Brony. They're going to do things to the mother character that you won't like.
Do the marker with me.
She was still pretty jazzy. I don't know. You can keep it the same because freaking Johnny was meant to be written as just a big macho womanizer dude that no one took crap from and beat him up whenever he did something stupid. So it probably all levels out. I mean, he always gets his freaking comeuppance.
Yeah, which was like literally every second of every episode for 9 seasons.
Yeah, that's probably why people still like it.
Name, Johnny Bravo. Occupation, Johnny Bravo.
I still understand how it was so popular in India.
It was?
Yeah, Bollywood tried to reboot it like 10 years ago.
I never knew that.
It's a very active cartoon. I think anyone could enjoy that.
I could see like Johnny Bravo being an anime.
Don't give him ideas.
Well, they did that with Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, but it sucked.
Brony, they did make a Johnny Bravo anime. It was called Bubble Bobo Bubble Bo.
No, they did not.
Awesome. Why was it canceled?
Heather, these guys have the ability to just be far away from me. I will walk to the other end of the hallway and slap you.
You won't do it. You won't do that to me.
And here we have the cancellation of Brony for domestic abuse.
Whatever. She beats me up way more than I beat her up, so shut the frick up.
That wasn't me. That wasn't me this time.
I know it wasn't. Yeah, I can tell when it's your soundboard. Your soundboard sounds like an 8-bit MIDI from 2003.
That's just because your connection sucks.
No, it's because you've got subpar equipment. Will Eisen says, Brony, I say no to a Gargoyles reboot because I do not want half of the Kurtzman Star Trek voice them. No, thank you. And I have no idea what he's talking about. Does anybody know what he's talking about?
In the
I think he's
original
saying he doesn't want the modern Star Trek actors voicing them like the original Star Trek voices acted in the original Gargoyles.
Oh, okay.
The guy who played Commander Riker was David Xanatos, which, by the way, perfect casting. I'm just saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we're bringing back Keith Davids.
It's kind of funny that Patrick Stewart, I think, was the only one who didn't get cast.
Yeah, but they can keep Brent Spiner, though. Screw that guy.
Wait, what's wrong with Brent Spiner?
I had a negative experience with him once.
Oh.
that's just completely subjective. Nothing else matters. I just don't like the guy. Cruiser's over here like he stepped on my new J's.
I mean, what evil presence lurks in Cruiser's history? Could it be a negative interaction?
Well, I mean, I already told you some about my personal life there, Silver. You want to know more?
I'm good, thanks.
All right. And we got to get wrapping up anyway, guys. So real quick, let's go around the table here. One thing, some closing thoughts and one thing you learned tonight. Cruiser.
I don't think I really learned much of anything. I still have the same thoughts that I do now. Reboots are okay. Some stories are worth retelling, but be careful. I think some of the rules that Silver Quill brought up make pretty good sense and are worth sticking to.
Alrighty then, Heather.
I want G.I. Joe to come back on.
I thought you wanted to know why Heaven blew up.
I want to move on, Cruiser. I'm not going to get the answers I want. Nothing that makes sense. It doesn't matter what we do. Nothing matters. Okay, moving on.
You're just going to have to write your own fan fiction, Heather, which is pretty much what Kevin Smith did, so you're good to go.
I'm still working on my thinly veiled G.I. Joe fan fiction novel.
Alrighty then. DJ.
It's been a pretty fun talk. Learned that apparently no one can really decide on exactly what makes a good reboot, though I think we narrowed it down pretty heavily to the characters, which I think was pretty good determination. On that, it's just been a lot of fun. I'm gonna be re-listening to this one for a while.
Alrighty then, and Silver.
Well, I find it funny that in all this talk about reboots, we never actually talked about the show Reboot, which got a reboot that was god awful.
Well, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I did not, after seeing just one trailer, I was not interested.
Yep. So, but in truth, I think we have talked about both maintain the spirit, but also it's something of an elusive achievement. It's really hard to know what to change and what not. And I always want to encourage people to innovate, but at the same time, really understanding what made the original so popular is a grounding strength for what can assist a reboot. If you stay true to that, I think people will walk with you through newer experiences or changes to what they would have perceived. I also learned how to give Heather an existential crisis with just a TV show.
Well, let me ask you this. I'll ask you this, Silver. What did the Gem and the Holograms movie do right?
It ended.
I love your answers.
All right. Well, with that, let's say good night, everyone. I'd say this was a fun stream. I hope it sounds like you guys had fun too, which is all that matters to me. Thank you guys so much for coming on tonight. Oh, real quick, I gotta read this one from Dag1984. Said on Serpentor, how can a villain that's the composite of Napoleon, Genghis Khan, Vlad the Impaler, Sun Tzu, and Caesar be such a failure? Heather, give me an answer to that real quick.
They all died. Of course they frickin' failed.
I would have said...
And it's Genghis Khan, not Genghis.
Yeah, whatever. Nobody knows that. Nobody cares. The dude's been dead for 1,000 years. Anyway, I would have said those are all, like, seriously irrational psychopaths and were never really good leaders in the first place. And half of them suffered from syphilis, which is also a degenerative neurological disorder. So... STD specifically. So yeah, those are not exactly the makings of of a good character like Serpentor. Anyway, I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Stay safe. God bless you all out there. Big thanks to my supporters, especially those on the $10 and up tier, such as Princess Heather Blossom, who joined us tonight. There's also Shady Oak Ministries, Sid McConroy, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, Kyle Christensen, DJ Skywalker, who's with us, Rein-Kun, Morningstar, Pony Cordero, QFlash, Billy Henline, Alden MacManx, EasyModeGamer, Kanto Acrylic VA, Zorrock 720, Mr. Sonic 31, and Dark Malcontent, author of the Metaverse series. If you want to check out their links and what they make some pretty good stuff. Links are in the description. If you want to get on the show, I'd love to have you. Let's get you on my Patreon for $1 a month, and you can come hang out with me and all these guys and pick the shows and pick the games, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, I will hope to see you all next time. Heather, what are we doing on your stream tomorrow?
Tomorrow's going to be the Minecraft stream.
All right, so go watch Heather Blossom's Minecraft stream at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Oh, and stay tuned as we debate how you pronounce the DuckTales theme. Woo-hoo!
Yep. Well, you see, that one was closer than the ones you were doing earlier. All right, and then next week, we're going to be doing some more gaming on my channel right here at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday. So I hope to see you all there, too. Have a wonderful weekend. Once again, God bless and stay safe, and say goodnight, everyone.
Take care, guys. Thanks for joining.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
Woo-hoo!